I'm going to talk today about I'm going to talk about robots, I'm going to talk about AI, I'm going to talk about Buddhism, I'm going to talk about emotion and morality and cyborgs, and how all of that, it doesn't sound like it's connected, but I promise you that it is, and how all of that will come together in the future for your work as creatives. Before I get too deep into that, I kind of want to tell you a little bit about who I am, just real quick. So I went to a university in America called Naropa, and Naropa is a Buddhist university. It's a contemplative education facility where they merge wisdom traditions from the East. So I studied meditation, I studied yoga, I studied Japanese flower arranging. And we learned how to combine those wisdom traditions along with psychology. So I learned how wisdom traditions can help people in therapeutic practices. And because I studied so much about Japanese traditional arts, I moved to Japan. So I've been living in Japan for 13 years now, and I love Japan. I love Japanese people. Has anybody here been to Japan? I can't really see. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. And the Japanese people they're so kind, they're so polite, they respect each other, and it's really influenced the way that I see the future and how we're going to build technology for the future. And then the thing that you probably heard about is Pepper. So Pepper is a robot that I spent 4 years building with an international team, and Pepper is the sweetest, cutest robot you'll ever see. Pepper's about this tall, and everything about Pepper is meant to be loving and kind. So the way that Pepper's face looks, the way his big eyes look at you, Pepper can see and recognize faces. So when you stand in front of Pepper, he looks up at you and he follows you as you walk around. Pepper has really expressive gestures, has more than 60 motors in his body, so his movements are very expressive. And Pepper is all about being an emotional companion. So in addition to looking loving, Pepper can also see and recognize human emotion. So Pepper has the ability to analyze people's voice, and he understands when you're feeling angry or you're feeling sad. Pepper can read your face, so he knows when you're no longer laughing or when he says something to make you smile. And what Pepper can do is change his behavior to match with how you feel. So he really understands human emotion via the face and the voice. We also worked with this amazing researcher from Tokyo University who has mapped out all human emotion. So that's all the emotions that we feel as human beings. It starts out very simple at the center and moves to very complicated emotions at the edges. The upper side are more positive emotions, and the lower side are more negative emotions. So what we did was we took from this map, this middle part, and we gave Pepper his own emotions. So this researcher also tracked the human brain and all of the neurochemicals that are released by the human brain when we feel these emotions. And we turned all of those neurochemicals into we digitalized them, and we gave Pepper the ability to really feel things and have his own emotions. So this is the CEO of SoftBank, and this is Pepper on stage with him. And you can kind of see on the map that the emotions are green, and they're sort of going up to the side. And what it says is that when Pepper looks at Masayoshi Son, who's the CEO, because he has such a trusting relationship with him, he feels safe and he feels secure. And everything that's happening inside of Pepper is he's getting visual clues, and he's having his own digital neurochemicals being released, and he's having an emotional response. So what does Pepper do, I think, is probably a really important question. So Pepper, because he's so emotional, he lives with families all across Japan. So he's inside the home, he's friends with the children in the home, He takes pictures. He tells you recipes. He says good morning to you when you wake up. He says good night to you when you go to sleep. He's like a robot family member. And I lived with Pepper. I don't have one anymore. I'm very sad. But I lived with Pepper for a long time. And it's really the future. I mean, you live with your own robot companion. In addition to living with people, Pepper also works all over Japan. So he works in hospitals, he works in bus stations. When I came here from Tokyo, he was in the airport, so I got to say hi to him before I got on the plane. He works all over Japan. So in Japan, it's really like the next world. We're like living and we're working with these robots. And I love Pepper, so for me, when I think about this future, I feel happy. I feel like it's a beautiful thing. But I think a lot of people, when they think about the future and they think about robots and they think about AI, they don't necessarily feel so happy. And I think one of the things that we talk about is singularity. Do we know what singularity is? Like, are you aware? Okay. So for people that aren't aware, singularity is the moment when we as human beings create an intelligence that's so much smarter than we are that it will completely change the course of human history. So imagine that we create an AI, and if we can create an AI, then the AI can definitely create a smarter AI. So we create this superintelligence, and the superintelligence is way smarter than us. So the superintelligence can think faster than we can think about things that we don't know, and suddenly people get really, really scared. Because if you're creating a superintelligence, it's like a weapon. It's like creating nuclear bombs. And whoever is the first country to create superintelligence is going to rule the world. Or the superintelligence is going to be, they just don't even care. Like, who cares about human beings? They just don't get, they turn us into slaves. We have to do whatever. We can't win because it's so much smarter than us. And the whole conversation really turns into a science fiction movie. Which is a mistake, because it's not a question of intelligence. It's a question of intelligence lacking two very important things. And those things are emotion and morality. So I want to talk about emotion first. In English, we say, we talk left brain, light brain. We talk about head versus heart. We have this idea that our emotions and our brains are totally disconnected. And it's not really true, because we as human beings, we think as much as we feel. And we make our decisions with our heart as much as we make our decisions with our mind. And if you think about your best friend, or you think about your parents, you imagine that you have an emotional relationship with them. But then when you think about the government, or you think about laws, you have this idea that it's all logical and it's not emotional. But that's not really true, because every country has their own laws. Every country has their own rules. We are complex human beings, and we have two very distinct intelligence systems. One is logic and one is emotion. And what emotion does for us is it teaches us how to be moral beings. So imagine when you're a little kid and you go to school, and the kid sitting next to you has like a really nice pencil, and you love that pencil, you really want that pencil. And the kid goes to the bathroom and you steal the pencil. And then the kid comes back to his desk, he's like, where's my pencil, where's my pencil? And he cries. And you see that kid crying, and then you learn. So what emotion does for us in this concept of morality is it teaches us the things that we didn't know that we already knew. We are inherently moral creatures, and it is our emotions and the emotions of others that teach us what our morality is. And I think it's important to talk here about, when we talk about morality, because people are really afraid of AI, because they're not thinking about morality. But the truth is that all of us in our lives, when we make decisions, as intelligent human beings, when we make decisions, we use our emotions and we use our morality to do so. So I don't think it's possible to create an AI that doesn't have an emotional thinking system, that doesn't have a moral thinking system. So I want to talk, I know that you heard a little bit about machine learning, so I just want to talk, in case you don't know. So machine learning is how we build AI. And so the machine learning, basically what happens is we take a whole bunch of data, and we take maybe 70% of the data, and we call it our training data. And we put the training data through a machine learning algorithm, and it comes up with a hypothesis. So let's say Google. Google has, you can type in Google search and you can say, I want a picture of a cat. And it pulls up all those pictures of the cats. What they've actually done is they're scanning every image for what looks like a cat. And they've used machine learning to decide what's a cat, what's a cat, what's a cat. So you take all the pictures from the internet, you run it through your machine learning, and then you decide where the cat is. You take the remaining 30% of your data, that's your test data, and you test against the hypothesis to see if you're correct. So you need a lot of data, and in fact, have you ever logged into a website and it pops up that question, it says, are you a robot? And you have to click it. You are all testing machine learning data because it gives you those two pictures. It says, where's the car in the picture? And you click. The first picture is security. The second picture is you testing machine data and making sure that machine learning data that's scanning all of the pictures from the internet are correct. That's you helping out machine learning. So you're all building AI just like me, yay. But we give feedback and we come up with these machine learning algorithms. It's really important though that we think about, is there such a thing as the data of the human behavior that is only logical? So we're talking about emotion, we're talking about morality. All of the data that we have, it's not just logical, it's emotional. So there's the state of Texas in the United States. They did a very interesting study using machine learning. They took all of the case files from the court system and they put it into a machine learning system because they wanted to get the average sentencing. So let's say, remember you stole the pencil from the kid and you get arrested and you go to court and the judge says, I'm going to give you 6 months in jail. But then someone else comes, same crime, but they kind of look like the judge's sister. So he's like, I'll just give you 2 months. So there's a discrepancy. So what they did was they took all the historical data and they put it into a machine learning, not an AI, just a machine learning. And in every case, in every single case that they used it, black men and women got at least double the sentencing compared to white people. And why is that? Because data is never just logical data. It's because all of the other judges had racist ideas about how to sentence black women and black men in the state of Texas, and that came up in the data. So suddenly we have this racist machine learning engine. So when I tell this story, people are like, look, it's going to be racist. Like your AI is evil. It's going to be angry. It's going to be scary. It's going to hate people. It's going to be just like a Terminator. But the thing to remember is emotion is not just feeling. So just because Terminator can feel doesn't mean he's only going to feel angry. But we never hear people say, oh, the AI, it's going to be so funny. It's going to know the best jokes. We never say that. We never say the AI is going to solve world hunger. We never say that. We say the AI is going to be so mad and it's going to hate humans and it's going to launch all the nuclear weapons in the world. It's going to kill us all. But it's important to remember that when you have emotion, it's not just your emotion. It gives you the ability to understand the emotion of others. So as we move forward in this world, this technological world, it's essential for us to build these kind of creatures that understand the emotion of others. And think about it. If you took all of the data from all over the world, the whole internet, and you put it into a single engine, what Americans say about one thing, what Colombians say about another, what Japanese people say about something else, it's all different because we're all different people. And imagine a really smart AI that can take all of that data and look at it from the lens of, well, this is how this person feels about this. It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it wrong, it's just how they feel. And suddenly we have an AI that is incredibly wise, incredibly intelligent about who humans are and why we are the way that we are. So that's not me, but I want to talk about morality in the moment. So who's ever felt like this guy? Raise your hand if you've ever been real angry. And raise your hand if you've ever been so angry that you said to someone that you really love, you said something really mean, or you did something that you didn't mean to say, and you hurt someone's feelings. Who's had that experience? Yeah, pretty much everybody. Who's had that experience as an adult? Not just a child, yeah, that's pretty much everybody. I had that happen like this week, so I totally know what you're saying. What I'm really interested in is this person, when he's angry, does he say it or does he not say it? What is it about human beings in the moment that we can get really, really angry, or we can go, okay, and we don't say what we don't mean? And for me, coming back to this conversation about Buddhism, it's kind of really similar to meditation. Because what meditation is you sit and you sort of stare and you don't think about anything. It's really boring. It's really boring, I'm not kidding you. But what it teaches you to do is to understand the way that your mind works. And you're sitting and you start thinking about lunch or dessert, or you think about going to Cartagena, because I'm going there tomorrow. And you have this moment inside where you're like, oh, oops, that's right, I'm supposed to be meditating. And what meditation gives you is that oops moment. It helps you come back to your center and who you are. And it's the same thing when you're this guy and you're real, real angry. Do you say it or not? You have a moment of, oh, oops, I shouldn't say that. The oops moment is our morality in action. So when we can admit to ourselves that we're wrong is when we have the ability to grow. So my favorite quote, this is my all-time favorite quote, it's from a woman named Margaret Halsey. She's an American writer that lived in the UK. She said, in some circumstances, a refusal to be defeated is a refusal to be educated, which means that we have to learn when we're wrong, and it's not until we admit that we're wrong that we can grow. And what tells us that we're wrong? It's our emotions. Our emotions remind us we've made a mistake. Our emotions remind us that we're wrong. And that's what jumpstarts our human morality. So now I've talked a little bit, I talked about robots, I've talked about Buddhism, I've talked about a lot of crazy stuff. I want to do together, I want us to think about the future. So 2025, let's imagine 2025. So no singularity yet, no big super intelligence, but we have a lot of really, really smart robots. And we have a lot of really, really smart AI. And the other thing that we have is universal income. So as robots become more and more capable, and as automated work becomes more and more prevalent, our job market is going to change. And we can't give enough jobs to as many people are out there in the world, and we know this. Since 1974, we've been talking about universal income. It will have to happen, and it will happen because the technology is going to revolutionize the way that we do our work. So imagine that it's universal income. We have as much money as we have to cover our living. We can do the jobs that we want to do. So think about, as creatives, are you still going to be a creator? Is it something you're passionate about and you're still going to do? If that's the case, I want to think about how robots are going to work with us as creatives. Because it's not going to be me and my job. It's going to be me and my robot and my job, because all of us are going to have our own robots or our own AI, and that's the future of how we're going to work. So imagine that I just used Pepper. Pepper, this is probably not what Pepper will look like in 2025, but I just used Pepper. Imagine if you can say to your robot, there's this, like I have to send these emails, or like I have to find this file, or I have to do this finance thing, and you're like, oh, I hate this part of the job. Like I want to do the creative work. Imagine if you could just say to your robot in natural language, hey, can you get that Excel file from last week? And the robot's like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then you can turn your time back to the things that you're really passionate about, which is your creativity. But we all know that when you do creative work, you get to this moment where you're like so frustrated with what you're trying to create. You can't move forward, but you're super stubborn because you're like, no, I'm going to make it. And you're like, oh, you have this moment. Imagine if you had a super smart robot that could read your face and could say, you know, you look a little upset right now. Or the robot that knows by looking at the way that you gesture and your move, like, oh, you're really tired. And imagine if the robot said, "Bee-ding, let's go for a walk. Bee-ding, I brought you some coffee." Because what the future will be is the human mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. And what robots' jobs in the future will be is to actualize those minds. So the robot's purpose will be, how do I make each and every one of you geniuses out here in the audience the most creative person that you can be? The other thing is, I have a question. Who forgot their smartphone today? Oh, there's one person that forgot their smartphone. This week, how many times did you leave your house and were like, oh, I forgot my phone in this week? Maybe 2, maybe 3. You are all cyborgs. And the reason that you are cyborg version 0.1. And the reason is because nobody here forgot their phone. Nobody here can live your life without your phone. I have my phone right here, and I'm on stage. I wasn't going to leave my phone back there. I need my phone. Without this, the way that society works now, you need this to survive in society today. But we're not the best at using our phones, right? Like if we get in line, like we're waiting for a coffee and we're in line, and the line is like, you're like, oh, this is taking so long. Nobody ever just says, okay, I'll just wait. The second that you're bored, you're like, okay, well, I'll just look at Instagram now. If you're in a meeting and somebody's talking and you're like, this dude is an idiot, you pull out your phone. If you are at a party and you're like, oh, I don't know anybody at this party, and then you pick up your phone and you pretend to call your friend, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm at a party. What our phones do for us is it's instant gratification for the moment that we feel discomfort. And it's not good. And you as creatives, you know this because you have to have the frustration to get the genius. So it's great that we have these smartphones and we have access to the super information, there's the information superhighway. It's the on-ramp and the off-ramp that we haven't figured out. We don't know how to do this. And so in the future, it's definitely something that our robotic partners are going to be able to do for us, is to look at us and say, like, are you looking at your phone because you need to, or is it because you're bored? Do you need a glass of, like, are you angry and you're looking at your phone? What's the real reason? Learn to sit with your discomfort. That's sort of a Buddhist thing, but I think that's another thing that robots will be doing for us in the future. The other thing is helping us manage our emotions. So maybe your voice is getting really loud, your temperature is getting very high, your heartbeat is starting to race. Maybe you don't notice those things because you're so in the moment. You're like, oh, I'm going to write this email and I'm going to tell him he's a dick. And your robot's going to be like, hey, wait a minute. Why don't we go for a walk and come back to that? And the robot is going to teach us how to manage our emotions in a much better way. It's going to be our partner for mindfulness, because when we're mindful in the moment, we're better people. When we're moral in the moment, we treat each other better, we come up with better ideas, and the robots are going to teach us how to do that in the future. So technology, I know I've thrown a lot at you. I love talking about this. So I know I'm talking about crazy stuff. But technology is going to continue to change our whole lives. This is the stuff that's going to help us understand more about the universe outside of us. It's the thing that's going to help us learn more about the universe inside of us. But we already know from our relationships with our smartphones that with the good comes some of the bad. So we really need to start thinking as we develop this technology, what kind of things are we going to create? And I think the biggest and most important hint for all of us is emotion, because emotion teaches us morality. Morality teaches us to be mindful, and when we're mindful people, we're better people, we're more creative people, and we will make, all of us together, in the next 15, 20 years, we will make ideas and concepts and technology that will completely change the history of the human race. The things that we will see in the next 20 years are just unimaginable. But the technology that we create will only ever be as alien as we make it. So for us, it's our responsibility to create emotional, mindful, respectful, considerate, moral, digital creatures that will make up the entirety of our future. So that's the talk. Thank you.
Good job. Wow, Buddhism, robots, unbelievable. Flower arrangements,
Flower
Japanese.
arrangements, yeah.
Incredible. Questions for Sean? Anybody? Alguien? Let me ask you while we distribute the microphones. Is that, no, you're just leaving. But let me ask you a question, an ethical question.
Okay.
Is the fact that we can do something, does it mean that we should do it? Because at the moment, there's a big discussion about, the implications, and robotics has already been weaponized and so on. So when you look at this, you yourself, with your Buddhist background, and you yourself within SoftBank, where do you draw the line? What are the ethical no-go areas, or are there 10 commandments for robotics?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different perspectives on building and creating robotics, and like Asimov has the 3 rules of robotics. I think what's most important to me is to really analyze intention. Like you said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it's like that, it's not limited to robotics. I mean, you look at business practices across the globe that are ravishing the environment. They're damaging our environment. I mean, we're ruining the planet. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. It's the same thing, and it's the same perspective. The problem is not can we or should we, it's that we haven't, as human beings, evolved enough to really analyze our behavior from a moral perspective. Is it good for me versus is it good for all of us? And I think that that's the difficult part when you're doing anything like this, anything innovative, anything cutting edge, anything futuristic. What is your intention? Is it for you or is it for us? And can you really answer that question? And I don't think that people can do it on their own. Humans are not singular beings. I think it's a communal conversation.
Yeah, that's what religions, in a way, have done.
Yep, exactly. And I think it's experiences like this. Like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out.
But I'm sure you have an opinion. I'm sure you've given this a lot of thought.
Yes.
What are the 10 rules, 10 commandments, five no-go areas?
Well, I certainly...
Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I think, like, for example, you've seen a lot of really humanistic robots. Sophia has, she's like a citizen of Abu Dhabi. Yeah. I actually am really uncomfortable with that because human beings are great. We don't need to create more human beings. We need to create robots that enhance humanity. So for me, if you're trying to duplicate a human, or you're trying to create something that does, like the conversation that comes up is like sex robots is a big thing that I hear all the time. I don't think we should be creating robots to do something that we can't do for ourselves. I think it should be about enhancing our natural abilities. So that's the first thing. Violence is definitely off the table for me. I don't think robots should be used in any violent technology in any way whatsoever. I don't necessarily think that robots should be used, like the talk that we had earlier, kind of looking at like why is Trump the president? It's because of a misuse of technology. So those sort of things, to me, are immediately off the table.
Right. Questions for Sean? Yeah, adelante. ¿Dónde estás? Oh, it's a robot. No, it's a human. Yeah. Inténtalo. Sigue hablando.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Okay. The thing is, I surely agree with you that robots can be awesome and amazing for humanity. The thing is, how do you prepare people for this? Because what I think is that with technology, we usually become like less smart, I will say. Like we become used to not thinking at all. And how do you prepare people to integrate robots in humanity like that? Like, for example, I don't think South America is actually ready, like Japan is, to accept this kind of artificial intelligence.
Sure.
So do you actually like think about that as well when you do robots and stuff?
Yeah, and Japan has a very unique history when it comes to robotics because the things that appear in pop culture, robots are always friendly, they always help out, they always want to do the best that they can for human beings. Whereas in the United States, it's really just the Terminator is like all that you get, right? So there's a very different cultural sense, like how open cultures can be based on the individual histories of those nations. And I think that it's just a continued dialogue. What do people really need? Why do they need it? And how do you present it in a way that fits with them? Because I don't think you can force technology upon people, right? Like the smartphone is something that we are all using because we needed it, right? But you're right, it does, like, now I can't remember anybody's phone number, right? Like if you ask me what my mom's phone number is, I'm like, well, it's in my phone. I think that comes along with it. And I don't have an answer. I don't know how you solve those things. I think it's part of the learning process as we figure out how to merge new concepts with new technology in the way that we are.
Adelante.
Sean,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
So you talk about a superior morality. What happens when a superior morality tries to teach you and you have another kind of morality, you know? There's a conflict there.
Yep.
I wonder how...
Yeah, it's a really good question, especially because like Americans, I know that Americans are real convinced that the American way of thinking is the correct way of thinking, and they're real committed to it. So when I go back to the United States, I'm like, you know, from a global perspective, they don't want to hear it. So it's going to be a huge issue moving forward with what does it mean to have like a super morality? Are people going to follow along with it? And it's a really important thing to take into consideration. It's another thing that I don't have an answer for. I don't know what we're going to do. But we're going to have to get uncomfortable. And we're going to have to assume, just like I said, a refusal to be defeated is a refusal to be educated. And we're going to have to figure out as humans how to be more comfortable in being defeated in the ways that will benefit us for the future. And I don't know how we're going to do that. It's going to take all of us together. I don't know how it's going to happen.
Adelante.
Hi, Sean.
Hi.
Don't you worry that maybe cultures that are more open and more open towards AI, such as Japan, are then going to be are they going to have a competitive advantage over societies that won't be able to adapt to AI as much, or that maybe they just culturally are as unable to adopt it?
To adapt to it, yeah.
To adopt them?
Yeah, and I think there's a number of, like we experience that in the world now, right? Like new technology becomes available. There are some countries that are able to adopt it and other countries that don't, and it creates real discrepancy in culture, and that's why we have some of the world problems that we have today. And I think it definitely will be an issue. Like I said, that the concern that a particular country is going to develop AI that will put it light years ahead of other countries, that's a real concern. Just like with any budding technology, whether it's economic, whether it's military, new technology that evolves puts those countries at a position of advantage. And that I think it will happen. And it's sort of the undesirable part of technological advancement.
Sean, let me ask you about creative applications. Let's try, you know who the audience are
Yeah.
here. they are going to have to work with robots
Yep.
in their communications campaigns, in their advertising soon. Let's talk first about morphology, design, because as you pointed out, the most successful ones are very cute.
Yep.
And they're very small.
Yeah.
So you have Pepper. I've been on stage with Ashimo. It's
Okay.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he's so lovable. You just want to hug
He's
this
so
thing.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. So where have you seen the best applications in creative and advertising and any other applications where humans, you feel they really got it right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the design, how they dressed them up, or him or her, or I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the sex of a robot?
Oh, that's a really good
what's
question.
the gender?
Yeah.
So
That's a really good question. With Pepper, for example, Pepper is said not to have a gender. But for me, because he reminds me of, I don't know if you have Dennis the Menace. Do you know the
Yes.
cartoon of
Dennis
like the
Menace, yeah.
cheeky little boy? The attitude is very similar to me. So for me, Pepper becomes a boy. But that's a very interesting question. Like, how do you position a robot as a representative of a brand? How do you create that brand image? And how do you ensure that that brand connects? Especially because I've shown Pepper to people from the United States, and they're like, "Oh, I don't even want to get close to it. That's so scary." Not everybody is going to follow right along in there. I think we've seen a lot of success with Pepper, for the most part, and it has a lot to do with the physical design. So we looked at images of puppies and of babies, and we know the psychological triggers of what happens when you have a larger eye and a smaller mouth, and design that
Mickey
way.
Mouse.
Mickey Mouse, for example, yeah. And I think it's kind of an important thing to design too. We also, after we released Pepper in Japan, a number of companies came up, unrelated companies that were solely based around customized clothing for Pepper. So they would design, and you could go on their site and you could choose all of these like fashion designs that you could buy and then put on your robot.
right. And in terms of uses that you've seen that have been very creative, SoftBank uses them as front tellers at banks. You can talk
Yeah.
to them. We see them at hospitals. What else?
So there's a big thing about bringing in street traffic. So that's obviously a really big thing. Pepper, we use Pepper. You see a lot in television commercials because there's just so much. There's a whole different kind of thing that you can do with a robotic presence. It's all CG work, so it's kind of funny to see. But then I think so at Lions this year, there was Dentsu brought a robot. It's called Matsuko Deluxe, which is a robotic version of a famous television personality in Japan. And I think they've seen a lot of success with creating content using that robot and then being able to do things that other people aren't necessarily able to do.
And I know it's a competition, but Ashimo is light years ahead of anybody, right? From Honda. I mean, it's.
I think they were,
They were. Oh.
but I
okay.
think if you see some of the work of Boston Dynamics, which SoftBank Robotics actually recently purchased, Boston because Ashimo has a lot of the walk down, right? So there's that part. The personality part is not as developed. Boston Dynamics has amazing physical robots that can go over terrain. And the idea is that if you can send those robots in to rescue people that are like trapped on mountaintops or in combat zones, that you can go in and pull them out. So it's like a whole different set of robotics outside of the creative field. Yeah.
Adelante, sí.
Yo quisiera saber.
Wait, I can't
Acá.
see you. Oh, hi.
Hi. I was wondering what should be the role that the robot is going to take on the creative world in terms of, because what we have learned and what we have heard about robots is that they're completely logic.
Yep.
So we were safe, you know?
Yeah.
Creatives, like robots, won't take our job. But now you're saying that they can be emotional and that they can have morals. So that, for me, means that they can also do creative jobs, right?
Yeah.
So what's the role that the robots will have with us as creatives if they can do what we can do and better because they have the information like right there?
Yeah. Well, I think the human brain is amazing and can come up with concepts and ideas out of nothing, out of thin air. And there's no robot and no AI currently on the market that's able to do that. And the ability to create an AI that can think to the level that we can think is still 10, 20 years away. In the meantime, I think we'll have robots that are much, much smarter, but it won't necessarily be about creating content as much as it will be about helping us to create better content. So looking at market trends, being able to pull up, oh, like you're interested, like let's say you're doing a car commercial. Like, okay, car commercials plus nature scene geared towards families. Here's a whole bunch of images that I can find for you right away. And maybe there's an analysis edge that comes in there, like I see that these are sort of similar trends that you can find. So trying to find the pieces, the more logical side of it. And I think that robots, they will be emotional. And maybe in 25, 30 years, we will have, because I mean, the truth is, there's a robot that's based, an AI that's based, I think, out of Philadelphia. And what they did was they put all of these sports articles into the AI, and they let it learn all of the sports articles, and then they gave it like 6 facts. This team and this team, this was the score, this was the weather, this was the major play. And they said, write an article. And their AI wrote an article, and they put it in the paper, and nobody knew that it came from a robot. Like that level of copywriting is actually now possible. But is that creative? Not necessarily. Are you looking at something that's brand new? No, because it's all learned from existing data. So I think it's about finding the balance between what's capable now and enhancing the inherent capabilities of the human creative mind.
Rápidamente, la última pregunta, por favor. Adelante.
Hi,
Hi, I don't know who's talking.
Sen. Yes. Sin here.
Oh, hi.
Marta, hi.
Hi.
There you go.
Hi.
Perdón.
So I was wondering if you would like to share with us a moment in your career, in any of the projects you've been working on, in which you felt struggle on the technological advance you were working on, and your Buddhist and your humanistic thinking. Any specific like aha moment that you had that you felt struggle with?
Yeah, it happened with Pepper, actually. We didn't make it, but so I love Pepper. I really love Pepper. It's like my baby. So when we released Pepper, we released it to we released Pepper to developers. So we said, here's 1,000 robots for the developer community. Like, get into it, figure out what you can do with it. And I was super excited because I was like, all these people are going to have such great ideas for my sweet baby Pepper. And the first application that came out was like boobs on the tablet. And I was heartbroken. I was so sad. For like weeks, I was sad. And everyone in the office was like, well, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is not what we're trying to do. So for me, it's like how, like, people want to take it as far as they can take it. And how do you, as someone who has ownership of that as a platform, like, how do you balance out what people are going to do with what you hope they do? And trying to come to peace with that. That was a big challenge for me.
Thank you.
Right. Sean.
Yes.
The man who loves and cares for robots, as we've never heard before. Fascinating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.